Hi, I'm Allison Dunn, and welcome to Deliberate Leaders Podcast. I am excited to have our guest today, who is Bear Newman. He is the co-founder of Bear Fox Marketing Agency here in Boise, Idaho. Before that, he was a web designer specialist and a SEO consultant. Bear is the author of the Bear Fox Principle, which is powerful, smart solutions to accelerate business revenue. Very good book. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Bear, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate that introduction.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm hoping that we can spend some time diving into online marketing, marketing strategies, going SEO or paid, talk about Google business listings. Does that sound all good for you?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, excellent. So you do a lot of marketing, both SEO and paid, for small and large businesses, correct? Tell us a little bit about your agency. I just want to make sure that our listeners understand the breadth of what you do.
Yeah, so we want, instead of running an agency where they try to do a little bit of everything, we really want to focus on just 4 main channels. So we focus on Google SEO, we focus on Google paid, Facebook ads, and then email campaigns.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of the ad copy, creative, everything kind of top to bottom to make your website perform in those 4 areas.
Fantastic. And just, is your typical client someone who utilizes all 4 of those service types?
Usually, but not necessarily. It could be they're getting started in one particular channel and need help getting off to a good start, or they've gone stagnant and want to start getting some gains again in that particular area. So some of our clients do have just SEO, just paid. There's a wide range there.
Okay, fantastic. So what is your overall principles when kind of helping a small business identify what they need to be doing to have an online brand?
Yeah, so one thing that you definitely want to be aware of with branding on the internet specifically is that you do have within each channel, they each kind of serve a different purpose and they complement each other quite often. So with organic, if you have your branded terms, they're usually very cheap to have a Google paid campaign. No one else usually bids on them unless you have a specific competitor that wants to kind of try and take you down. And it's relatively easy to be ranked there organically, but you do want to make sure you have those branded terms covered on the organic as well as on the paid. If they start Googling you, especially with like a Facebook campaign, if they see your ads and then they Google you, quite often they'll see the ad. The trust factor on a Facebook campaign or Facebook in general isn't as high as Google.
Right.
And so a lot of times they will actually Google your company name after having seen an ad. And if you don't show up there, it can actually negate a lot of the effectiveness of your Facebook campaign. So from a branding perspective, you want to make sure you're high and tight on the organic side. And if you can't get there yet, you can always fire off a Facebook, Google paid campaign really cheaply and make sure you have those keywords covered.
Okay, so you almost have to dual track it, especially while you're paying to be placed. You want to make sure you're showing organically. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. I obviously work with a lot of my clients in making sure that their marketing strategies are powerful and have multiple avenues that they're focused on. And your element of things, what is the specific strategies that you would recommend for a business that already has revenue coming in but wants to look for growth, and what is the appropriate amount of growth in the strategies you recommend?
Okay, good question. Looking at it, it really comes down to what they want to try and accomplish.
Okay.
So a lot of people have a certain amount of revenue they want to add, a monthly amount of growth or new clients that they want to add to it. And so we really try and go on a case-by-case basis to figure out, okay, what product do you have, what service do you have, and then actually figure out which channel would be best to apply that revenue to really to get it to grow. Facebook is interesting because it's an interruptive media. And so if you have a new product or a new service that no one knows about, you almost can't really rely much on Google to drive new traffic because that's where people are actively looking for your product. So we kind of come back to, okay, where are you at right now? And what is it you want? If you look at a channel and say, this is what I need for this channel to be successful. Is it amount of revenue? Is it new number of clients? Is it a new email campaign or a number of subscribers to your email channel? So really it's very specific to the individual.
In business sectors, are you finding that Facebook is a performer for most companies? Like they put money in and they get results back out? I don't know that I'm a believer.
It can be. To be quite honest, it can be. It really depends on how the campaign is run.
Okay.
Facebook is honestly a bit of a beast in the fact that it's not as easy as Google Ads, and the simple fact that if you're interrupting someone from doing what they're intended to be doing. And so you have to bring awareness to the individual of your product or service, and then you kind of have to move them down. So you can't come out and say, hey, we have a promotion going on right now, if they don't even know who you are. They'll just say, hey, block this particular ad. I don't know what this is. I don't know why they're showing it to me. Get it out of here. As opposed to Google, where they're actively looking for your product. So like, hey, perfect timing. I'm looking for this service. There's a discount right now. Sign me up. And so it's a much longer process to kind of fill that funnel and move them down to understanding who you are, why they should buy from you, and then actually give them an offer that they can act on.
Okay. And that makes sense. What is your favorite marketing strategy for a typical business that you work with?
Good question. So we have lead generation that we do for companies, and we have a lot of consumer packaged good products that we work with as well. My personal favorite is to run an SEO campaign and get them as high as we possibly can organically, and combine that with the Google Ads campaign. So if there's a product they have that people know is out there, say one company we worked with had a probiotic, and so we were able to get them a really good ranking for that specific product. And then we combine that with the Google Ads campaign. And where the magic comes in is on that first page, you have to get people to click on your ad and click on your website. That's kind of the first priority. Once you get the ranking, they have to click on it. That click-through rate is how we gauge how effective the ad campaign is really going to be and how it drives the traffic, how they're responding to what they're seeing. If you can get a good click-through rate on an ad campaign, you'll have maybe 9 or 10% click-through rate. Organically, if you're number one, you'll be between 40 and 50%. Okay. So a lot of people say, okay, well, if I have a paid campaign and I'm organically number one, I can expect to have 50 to 60% of the traffic. What they found, and what I've actually tested myself, is if you can get a paid location and a number one ranking, your click-through rate goes from 50% to closer to 90%. And your conversion rate, meaning if they buy from you, typically triples, because the trust factor goes way up. The people see your ad and they're like, well, okay, they're paying for it. They see Google ranks you number one. The trust with Google organically is huge. So they basically come to the conclusion, well, there's probably no one better, so I might as well go ahead and act now.
Right, that's interesting. A lot of my clients have very good rankings in top 1 or 2 position, and therefore I think that they kind of justify that they don't need to do paid, but that's kind of that conversion and that ramp up, that's huge.
Yeah, it really is. And I've tested it myself. I've had clients who have been number one and number two. So they own the first page, and they're like, we don't need to pay for this. It's a waste of money. So I said, okay, you know what? This is typically what the studies show, but if you want to shut it off, let's shut it off. We shut it off for a week, and he was calling saying, turn it back on, turn it back on. All of our sales are down. We've got to get the sales back up. And so there was an immediate impact and turned back on. So he was in the paid, and he stayed organically well ranked, and he was happy, saw great conversion rates.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing you say is you really kind of need to do both in order to get the maximum results.
Ideally, you want to, so it really comes from the mindset of, I don't want to compete on the first page. I want to dominate on the first page. I want to be all they see on that first page, that if my name is synonymous with whatever the search term is, I am the only one they need to look at. And as much of that real estate that you can take, do it. But it comes back to the data as well. So if you're suspicious that, you know what, this may not be worth the money I'm spending on it, I would run a test and follow the data. See what it says. This is, you kind of know the baseline, and then see if it holds out. Okay.
Excellent advice. In kind of working through like how much to allocate for a typical business, is there a ratio on, 50% of your, online budget should be spent on blogging and articles and keywords and amplifying? Like what would be the ratio between paid and SEO, like organically working yourself up?
General rule of thumb is going to be just 10% of your gross sales, you're going to want to reinvest. This is actually, last year was the first year ever that digital marketing was the largest percentage of any company's budget as a whole. So it was always magazines, it was radio, it was TV, and now everything is starting to trend over to the digital realm.
Okay. Wow. So 10% total budget with obviously SEO efforts as well as all the other strategies that companies typically do. Okay. And I'd say
on the SEO breakup, so that's where the individual goals of the person come into play, because if SEO is a long-term play, it's going to take months to potentially years, depending on where you're competing. One of the things we do at Bear Fox is we insist on doing an SEO audit. It's almost like a competitive analysis to find out what it is we're getting into before we get into it. So there could be keywords that are really, really competitive, and you could spend $10,000 a month for the next 2 years and you're not going to break the first page. And so you really could better allocate those dollars somewhere else and get some kind of market penetration there. So knowing what you're getting into and what kind of time frame you can expect to have some kind of results is going to be key.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, because there's some pretty mature industries out there that it's just it could take a long time to get up there. What are your I don't know, like DIY suggested tips, like before someone is really ready to hand it off? What are the things that business owners could be doing before they can pay someone to do it for them?
Content on your website is always good. I believe there's a saying out there that content is king. I disagree to a point. I believe marketable content is king. So really that content is only driving value if people can find it. And making good, solid content on your website is an easy way you can do that. You're the expert in your industry. It takes time and it takes discipline, but once you start adding good content to your site, and you can always throw in some backlink building, driving authority to your website, but it's going to have content eventually. And so that's the first place I would say you can start, is building content to your website and share your expertise. And the other realms, really, other channels, is going to be dependent upon their ability digitally. I've spoken to business owners who are actually pretty fluent in Google Ads, understand how it works. And I have other business owners that say, what is exactly a Google ad? Like, where is that at? So it can really depend on the individual.
Okay. Website authority is something that I've become more aware of. What are the key things that impact the authority of one's website?
Great. So in SEO, so to get that number one ranking or a top ranking, is really comes down to two major factors. It comes down to the relevancy of your site. So Google doesn't want to show, if someone's Googling refrigerator, they don't want to show BMWs. So really it's just about being relevant for the categories, the first stage. And that's where the content comes in, your site structure comes in, making sure your website is fast will come in and make sure you're relevant and provide a good user experience. The second piece is going to be the links that go to your site. So the backlinks. That's where who is linking to your site, how many links you have, the phrases that are used in those links are going to have an influence. It does help if you look at it from Google's perspective. What is Google's product? Google's product really is just a referral system. They say, come to us, we know the internet, and we will guide you to the best, most relevant and trustworthy person that's not going to lead you astray or give you a bad result for what you're looking for. So that's kind of their product. And it's very similar in an SEO realm to looking for a restaurant. If you're in a new region and you Google, show me a Chinese restaurant near me, if there's one that has 5 5-star ratings and one that has 500 5-star ratings, you're most likely going to go the one with the 500 5-star ratings. So that's kind of Google's perspective. You want to have good ratings and you want to have as many as you can, and that makes you more authoritative in their eyes. So you're the one worthy to be placed in the number one spot.
I've personally noticed in some of my own searching terms that sometimes they don't actually display the one that has the most reviews or at least the most 5 stars first. What causes that?
So it can be a number of factors. There's about 220 plus variables in Google's ranking algorithm. Only. And everyone else is really just trying to figure it out. And so they're doing their best guess. Some of the obvious factors, you can outrank a site if so the title tag is essentially that blue hyperlink that everyone reads over to figure out what it is. If you're ranked number 3 and your title tag is better, it basically makes people want to click on your site to find out what it is than the number 1 ranking site. Google tracks that, and they will move your site up over the other sites because of the click-through rate that your website has. So there's a way you can beat your competition without having to have as many backlinks.
Okay, interesting. What is your philosophy on people blogging for your website and paying them to do so?
In what, like adding content to your site, or adding on different sites and linking over?
Like both, I guess. I'd say both. I get requests for both, and I always go like, "Ooh, is that something I want to do? Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know."
It depends. If they're paying you, Google's basically saying you are getting paid for your backlinks, and Google can frown upon that.
Okay.
So you do have to be aware of that. I have heard of sites that have been penalized because they were selling a lot of links. They had a very authoritative website, and so they had a lot of people saying, "Hey, can I post content on your site and get a link back from you? I'll pay you X amount of money." Google caught on to that and penalized the site and all the links that were posted on the site. Okay. So for Google, that's not good. In reality, in the real world, that's pretty common. Bloggers that have a good authoritative website, if you want a link from them, you're going to have to offer them some kind of value some way. Okay. So if you write the content and give it to them, generally they're going to want to be compensated in some way for posting your content. So it's really pretty common to have guest post links going back to your site. You do want to be careful. That can get you in a little bit of trouble if you want to rank for a specific given term. Let's say you had a pest control company and you want to be ranked for pest control, and you went out and had 500 of those websites link over to your website for the keyword phrase pest control. Google tracks that, and they're going to say every one of those links had the exact same phrase in it. That is not natural, and we think you bought all of those links, so we're going to crush your site and not rank anything. So there's some good and bad elements to it, and how you do it.
Okay. What have you found to be an effective motivation for people to post your blogs?
Usually, the content is really well written and they really enjoy the article, that they'll post it just because they really like it. So it has to have a lot of personality and be unique. And that's where the business owner can bring something very unique to the table, because they'll understand that they can write it with a little bit more jest, a little more entertainment factor to it. And the other thing is generally they want to be paid in some way, shape, or form. So.
Okay. So quality first, and then something for them in the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
much.
fair. Yeah. That's fair. One of the things that I was hoping that you could shed some light on, and I don't know if you manage Google business pages for companies or not, but Google My Business listings is it appears to be more aggressive, at least my perception in last year. So some of the things that business owners absolutely should make sure that they're doing on their Google business listing page, even though they do already have a website.
So great question. So you are correct. Google has gotten more aggressive. I think they're only going to continue to get more aggressive just because of the sheer revenue that they can start driving by dominating, pushing out Yelp a little bit and some of those other listings there. So the number one thing I would say is, when we're talking about an organic ranking on your site for SEO, we're talking about links. When you're talking about a local location for your site and you want to be authoritative, and like the Google Maps, is going to be called your citations. So essentially it's just your name, contact information, your address, and make sure they're consistent across all of the different directories for your region. So really that's the number one factor. Is if you have any discrepancies, different phone numbers, different addresses, it will affect those kinds of rankings.
Okay, interesting. That's an interesting component. Can one create a business listing in a market they don't exist in?
You used to be able to do that, and Google's gotten really good at making it really complicated or difficult to do that. So a lot of people used to set up PO boxes and set that up, and Google says, yeah, that doesn't work anymore. So they've gotten quite good at verifying the address. And honestly, I wouldn't expect to rank for a geographic location you don't have a physical office inside like the maps section.
Okay, so that being kind of keyed to the business listing itself.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the easiest ways for a local business to optimize their Google business listing profile?
Again, just the first thing would be the consistency,
Okay.
making sure you're out there, all the information is consistent, and really having some of these locations. It's borderline extortion what some of these directories charge, I think, for just having your information out there. But the reality is, it's actually a really good link. In addition to that, so I wouldn't view it as just maybe one element. It's really going to be a multi-pronged approach. So paying them for that link, for the SEO element you're going to get from it, as well as having control over the profile, the correct listing, making sure that it's all consistent, is actually well worth it. So going to these different social media, whether it be Facebook, and then Yelp, and just different areas like that that have directories with listings, those are actually good links. So if you can pay $200 or $300 a year, a lot of times those can be worth their weight in gold with what they can actually drive in traffic to your site.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you have any hacks that local businesses can use to get more customers to take photos of their business? And obviously, and then share those on Google with the key of them sharing. Sorry.
Yes. So the biggest hack I've seen is if you do a service and they're happy with the service, pull out a tablet and have them do it right there.
Ooh, that's good. Okay. So on the spot, happiness.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
On the spot, as soon as you can do it. Google is sensitive to any kind of promotions you offer to get reviews, and that they might be skewed in some way. So really, if you can have any kind of an iPad or something like that, whether it be with an employee or with yourself, if you do a service and they're happy, do the best you can to get that review right then.
Okay. Is there, do you recommend utilizing services to get reviews post-service, like not right there with your own iPad, but I mean, do you have any suggestions on how we can get more reviews organically?
I do. So yeah, I definitely would put that in an email chain and use some of those services, whichever one you might prefer. Yotpo is quite good. There's a lot of SEO element that they put on your website. So there are different services out there that can be very effective. There is that element of a website. If they're not that familiar with your service or product, the more trust you can establish with number of reviews, high quality reviews, whatever you can do to overcome that trust factor is really the best thing you can do, or money well spent.
Okay, interesting. Is there a perfect ratio for how many reviews a company should have, or is it just chasing who has the most?
Excellent question. So they've actually done studies on this, and they found that if you can get really the optimal range is anything over 100, the trust factor starts to kind of taper off. And so the quicker you can get to 100 or 50 to 100 range, the best. So if you're at 5,000, that's awesome. Focus your efforts somewhere else, and you have a stellar product and service. But I would try and get to 100 as quickly as you can.
Okay, so 100. That's a great marker to aim at for sure. What would you say? So the chase to 100. So it's making Google feel more authentic about your service. But what happens if your competitors have none?
That is great for you.
Okay, good. Okay, fair enough. So let's talk about some action steps, things that you would suggest that someone who's in charge of their marketing for their business, or if someone's doing it as just a small business owner, what are the things that you would suggest your prospective client to do that are the most maybe easy things for them to do and untapped opportunities really that every business should do?
I would say that the first thing I would recommend that they do is, before you can assess what channel to go after, know your numbers. I'm amazed at the number of business owners I work with that I'll talk to them and say, okay, what is your cost per acquisition, or what is your customer lifetime value? Just let me know what metrics I'm working with so I can make it successful. If you get into a Google ad campaign and it can cost $35, sometimes $50 on a click, just for a click, and you don't have large margins to work with, it makes that channel basically a no-go. So it's an easy answer saying, don't go here, let's focus elsewhere. But if you don't know those basic numbers, then it's going to make any direction you go very difficult to figure out what you need to do to make it successful.
Okay. Yeah. And knowing the numbers, obviously, that's like the first piece of advice, I give as a coach as well. So, from the standpoint of identifying what is the right balance for a marketing budget. So you used 10%, I think was your earlier number that you tossed out, 10% of revenue, correct?
Yeah.
How does a company identify what the best ways to allocate that amount in their budget? Any suggestions?
Yeah, good question. So it's going to come down to the time frame that you're looking at. SEO always has typically the largest return of any channel, but it also takes the longest to get the return really generating consistently. So you're generally looking at about 6 to 10, sometimes 12 months out to really see a good return on that investment. So you will want to take a look at, we want to have this going. The size of the budget is going to be contingent on that. Facebook is going to be a few more months out. If you need the campaign to self-fund, then you're going to look at email campaigns, depending on the size of your database, or a Google ad campaign to start driving sales relatively quickly. But yeah, there is a misconception, excuse me, around Google ads, that once you turn it on, all of a sudden the sales start coming in. And generally that's not what we've found. We've seen it time and time again, that even with Google ads, it can take, if you've never run one before, it can take a couple of months to really crack that code to get it cranking consistently. So you have to understand what keywords to bid on, which keywords drive the sales, what they're looking for. So make sure that the copy you're creating in your ad actually speaks to people and solves their problem. And then you direct them to the correct landing page. So that page has a message that they resonate with and that they want to take action on and feel confident you can solve their problem. So there's a number of layers that need to be kind of sorted out to make sure the campaign is successful.
What is, in your opinion, utilizing email marketing as a strategy? When do you know when it's working well? Is it open rates?
Open rates is definitely where it starts. And then really, again, going back to what is your objective? It can be relatively inexpensive to add people to an email campaign. And then if your end objective is revenue or sales from that, the open rates are great, but at the end of the day, it needs to be producing revenue. And so revenue is what I would gauge is the effectiveness of that campaign on. It starts with click rate. I mean, you can't make any sales if they're not opening it.
Correct. Although if one person opens it and buys, that's not a bad conversion rate.
True. Yeah, exactly. So as long as they're opening it and then you've got good conversion rates. So it's almost looking at it in layers that you can't sell unless you have a good open rate. So the open rate needs to speak to them. You need to make sure you have an email list of people who are engaged with your product, and then look at the revenue and say, okay, this is actually really good. This is in a good spot. The revenue is not as high as it should be. So then you can kind of assess, okay, well, how is my copy inside of the email? Does it speak to them? Am I really not offering as good a value as I should? What is it that's missing to drive the revenue?
Okay. In thinking about creating improvements in SEO and investing in paid ads for them to go back to a website that's either unattractive or not relevant, how do you know when you're both of those? You're unattractive and you're not relevant, or is it self-exploratory?
That's a good question. So really looking at your numbers and looking at the kind of traffic you have, one of the most telling indicators, I heard this years ago when I first got into internet marketing, was the bounce rate. So if you have a really high bounce rate, Avinash Krishnik is the one that said it. He basically said, if you have a high bounce rate, it means I came, I saw, I threw up, and I left. And so if you have a high bounce rate, it's basically, that's not good. You need to get out. If your site is slow, that's also a huge indicator. And it's funny, one question some people ask, well, how fast does my website need to be to not get penalized? And I think the best answer for that is, that's just kind of another way of saying, how bad can my site be without getting penalized? Make your site as fast as you can. There are tools out there that can test how fast your site is and make it as fast as you possibly can. It's an easy fix and it can have great results for you long term.
Okay. So site speed, and I guess I know that you just answered the question, but is there like, what is fast?
Yes. Under 3 seconds
Okay.
is definitely going to be mandatory. They have found that for every additional second your website takes to load that than a user expects, your conversion rate will drop by 20%.
Wow. Okay.
So
And that has been
idea.
one of my personal challenges this year, is being hosted and not being fast enough, but not having any control over it. So maybe that's a misconception on my behalf. Maybe I do have more control over it.
You usually do. There are a number of tools out there. GT Metrics is a really good one that can run it in a number of different tools and give you actually a comparison of your website against your competition. So you can see how your website's loading, and then it will give you a specific list of things you can do to your site to make it faster.
Okay, cool. That's a great tip. So we also talked about, you mentioned bounce rates. So, they came, they saw.
Yeah.
What is too high of a bounce rate?
Again, that it depends on the niche. If you're anywhere in the 80 or 90%, it's way too high.
Not good.
You should strive to be below 60%.
Okay.
And then as low as you can. If you have a really, really low bounce rate, like under 10%, that's pretty remarkable. And I would look at that as something's wrong with your tracking.
Okay. That's fair. So don't pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, if you have a 30, 40, 50% bounce rate, you are doing excellent.
Okay, so 40 to 50. Cool. That's super helpful. So we've kind of gone through all of my key questions. Is there anything that I didn't think to ask you?
Not really, other than just with the Facebook and the Google Ads campaign. I would say one of the biggest obstacles I face with business owners is they want it now. Yeah. 2 months down the road is too long. And we have clients right now that we've explained to them the process. It's going to take a few months, and they literally went from they had a school that they wanted to sell their classes for, and we explained to them, okay, this is how it's going to ramp up. And they went from about 25 sales the first month, and they were freaking out. We need to have more than this. The second month, I think they went from 25 to 50. They doubled, and it still wasn't as where they wanted to be. The third month, they went from 50 to like 135.
Oh, wow.
And that's typically what we see. It's that first month, second month is kind of fine tuning it, and then getting that third month, getting it to take off. But if you can't make it through those first 2 months, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Google Ads, you're never going to be able to really reap or sow the fruit that you could if you'd waited.
Okay.
And part of it is having the trust in the team that tells you it's coming, this is what we're seeing, and understanding, having them educate you and have that confidence that you have a good team behind you and that they're actually doing a good job.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's a good suggestion that all good things take time, right? Nothing is ever really instantaneous. But so you'd say lead time minimum to start to actually see like top level results is at least 90 days.
You can see results like that first month. We had leads coming in. The second month, there was that kind of traction coming in, but they wanted to have, I think, 70 or 80 leads coming in. And so the first and second month, if that's what they were gauging it on, say by the second month, if I don't have 80, I'm cutting this off. And they really would have thrown the baby out with the bathwater had they cut it off after the second month. It was that third month that it went to a new level. And they were actually selling out their classes that they had never done in the history of their company before. So that was like a new high they had never hit.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Good tip. I just want to make sure that our followers know how to either connect with you or where they should follow you online. Where would that be, Bear?
So bearfoxmarketing.com is probably the best place to find us. We've got, if you just Google Bear Fox Marketing, we're #1, so they can find us there. We do post on YouTube. Is where we've got some educational videos out there, and we're readily available.
Okay, fantastic. And I just want to do a quick endorsement. You helped me through an audit of my website, and that was an invaluable insight into things that I needed to start working on. So Is that something that you do with everyone or just me?
We do that with everyone. We
Okay.
do a full, depending on what they're looking for. We always take a look at just trying to assess their site. If there's some quick wins we can offer to them and help them out and kind of guide them in the right direction. So regardless, we always kind of look at ourselves as business consultants, and Phil will come back that if there's something we can offer that can give you some quick wins, we're more than happy to help out and do that. If you want a full in-depth competitive analysis, we can do that and work with you in the process of doing that.
Okay, fantastic. Bear, it's been such a pleasure. I appreciate you sharing these tips and tricks with our listeners so freely. And again, I just want to say it's bearfox.com is where they can connect with you online. Yes, that would be your preferred venue?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been great.